Hey everyone, this is Mike, and today I'm going to be doing the level 80 overview of the Red Mage. Red Mage didn't really change all that much going from 70 to 80, mainly getting some new additions to skills we already had or some quality of life, improving on some old skills as well. For a single target rotation, Impact got removed and was replaced in a AoE skill now, so instead of just spamming Scatter for your AoE, Impact's now going to be part of your AoE rotation. As we now also have a white and a black mana variant for our AoE now as well. So that means that our single target is a little bit less complex, I guess you could say, but the core of the gameplay still remains the same. So what is this core gameplay? Well, we have two things. We have our dual casting system, which basically means every time you cast a spell, the next spell is going to be an instant cast. The reason why this is important is because Red Mage has a lot of fast casting abilities, which are used to trigger this dual cast. And then they have a few long cast abilities which you want to use the dual cast proc on, so that you're not standing there casting for 5 seconds but that the cast is instant, and also allowing you to get some movement and weaving actions in between, since Red Mage has quite a lot of off GCDs to press as well. Second aspect of the game is managing your balance in between the black and white mana gauge. You want to try and keep this gauge as close as possible, because once you have too big of a discrepancy in between your two manas, generating the lower mana is going to become a lot harder. So let's take a closer look at what we have. First of all, let's go over our single target rotation real quick. So as our normal combo starter, we have Jolt 2. This is a fast casting ability that will give us both black and white mana. And this will proc our dual cast. So the next ability that I were to use is now going to be an instant cast. I'll just use Jolt again, just to show this, and as you can see it was an instant cast. I can just move around. Now normally we'd be spending this dual cast on either for Arrow or for Thunder. These are both very long casting abilities. As you can see, it takes about 5 seconds to cast it. But of course under dual cast this will become an instant cast. So we're going to be spending our dual cast procs on either Arrow or Thunder if we're doing our single target rotation. For our AoE rotation we'll be spending it on Impact. Then, from these Arrow and Thunders, you will have a 50% chance to proc either Stone or Fire. Stone gets procced by Arrow, which is again another white mana skill. Fire gets procced by Thunder, which is a black mana skill. This is 50% chance, but we also have a skill called Acceleration, which basically guarantees the proc. This also guarantees the proc on Holy and Flare, which are your combo finishers of your melee combo, but we'll talk about how you proc that in just a second. So in general, your rotation will look a little bit like this. You start with Jolt, you cast Arrow for example, we procced Stone, so now we are replacing our Jolt with the Stone. Since this is building a lot of white mana, we're now gonna use black mana skills. I use my Thunder but no proc. So I'm going to use Thunder again to get my mana gauge up again. We procced Fire, so we replace Jolt with the Fire. And we just keep going like this, building up our mana gauge. Of course, you can use Acceleration in between this whenever it's up to guarantee you the proc. And then once we have enough mana, or once we have enough black and white mana gauge, we can actually start spending it on some cool stuff. Now, first of all, really quickly, AoE. We have Arrow, which generates white mana, and then you use your Impact. And then we have for Thunder for our AoE black mana skill, and then we can use Impact again as like kind of the filler. So that's AoE, pretty simple. Now, to spend this mana, we have a few abilities. Again, for AoE, we have this thing called Moulinet. This consumes 20 mana of both of your gauges to have it in the enhanced version. All of your, I guess you could say mana spenders also have non-enhanced versions, but they're not worth using without the enhanced version because they're slower and they deal less damage. So that's why you always want to use the enhanced versions of these. So Moulinet consumes 20 black and white, does 200 damage in a cone in front of you, so this is really nice to spend on your AoE stuff. We have Enhanced Reprise. This is a bit of a weird one. So the damage of this is not super high, but it also doesn't consume much gauge. So you have some time where you can use it, like for example if you need it for movement, even though Red Mage already has a lot of movement in its kit because of its dual casting nature. But sometimes if you do need that extra bit of movement, you could use Reprise. if you need to weave something extra or something like that. Or for example, if you would be overcapping on mana, you could use this. In general, you're not really going to be using this too much though. The weird thing is you're most likely going to be spending the mana on a single target Moulinet more often than not, because it consumes more mana, because of this thing right here, which I'll talk about in a sec. But we have this, so it's a nice thing that it's there. You're not going to be using it too much, but it's just single target, instant cast ability, allows for some extra movement if you were to need it or something like that, or to prevent capping mana if you can go into like your burst phase or something right after. But the most important one is going to be your 1-2-3 combo, so I'm gonna very quickly generate some mana again, because we do need 80 mana of both of our gauges to be able to use the full combo. And this is gonna do two things for us. So first of all, it's a 1-2-3 melee combo, and once we finish this, we get access to Verholy and Verflare. Now, the way you want to do this is you want to use the one that has the least mana. So since my white mana gauge is the lowest, we're going to use Holy. And then this combos into Scorch. Let me close the window real quick because there's a dog barking outside. So basically what you want to do is, as you're building up to your melee phase, let me just generate some more mana real quick. You want to go in with at least 80 of both. You want to have a slight mana discrepancy, I guess you could say. So that, well, we have a fire proc. I'm going to turn it off. So when we go in, you want to have one mana that's lower than the other, because that way you can guarantee a proc. So whenever you use Verflare or Verholy, when that mana, respectively, is lower than the other, you're going to guarantee a stone proc if it's holy, or a fire proc if it's fire, or if it's black mana. So I'm gonna do my 1-2-3 melee combo again. Since black mana is lower this time, we're gonna use Verflare. And as you can see, we now have a Verfire proc, and then of course use Scorch as well to finish it off. And then we can just keep going just like this. So that's pretty much your single target rotation when it comes to your GCDs. You build up your gauges, you use acceleration, make sure your gauge stays kind of similar to each other. And then once you have 80 mana gauge of both, you can go and into your melee combo for your big burst damage. Oh, I accidentally pressed that too soon. But yeah, so that's basically, that's weird. Alright, I must have lagged out, doesn't matter. So that's kind of like what you're going to be doing with your single target rotation when it comes to your GCDs. Of course, we also have a bunch of off GCDs that we can use, acceleration being one of them. But other than that, since we are a caster and we might not always be next to the boss, we also have some movement abilities. So the first one is going to be your gap closer. This is called Korakor. Just brings you back closer to the boss. And we also have the opposite, which is called displacement, which will make you do a big backflip. Now, the thing about displacement is the fact that you cannot double weave this. So all of your abilities can be double weaved except displacement. This needs to be single weaved in between GCDs. But the cool thing is, because you won't always have the chance to backflip away because of some mechanic, or because you might miss healing because of this, we now have a different skill called engagement, and this will actually make you backflip on the spot. And this is also being able to be double weaved. So this is really good. So it is a little bit less potency than your displacement. It's a 50 potency difference. But if you were to lose a cost of displacement because you have to hold it for so long because of mechanics, because of healing or something like that, then using engagement could be a damage gain, because you could get an extra cost out of it or something like that. Now, other than this, we also have manification. I'm gonna dump some mana real quick. There we go. So what manification does is two things. First of all, this is what engagement looks like, by the way. It will double your mana gauges, as you can see. It will also reset Korakor and displacement, and it will also give you a 5% damage buff for a few seconds. The damage buff is long enough for you to be able to do your 1-2-3 combo finisher into Scorch. So it's just long enough to do that, so you basically always want to use manification right before you go into your melee combo. Now, other than that, we still have our raid buff as well, which is called Embolden. This is a bit of a weird one. You just use it, and then every 5 seconds, it's going to reduce in potency by 20%. So when you first use it, it lasts for 20 seconds, by the way. So when you first use it, you're granted a 10% buff to yourself as well as to other physical damage dealers. Physical damage dealers part is really important because it doesn't work on stuff like your healers or other casters. So Red Mage fits mostly in a melee focus comp, nothing with double cast or something like that. But the magical damage portion is affecting yourself. The best place to use this is of course during your big melee combo, as this will fit in quite nicely. But of course you want to be using this on cooldown, so it lines up with all of your other raid buffs. The reason why you can kind of line it up with your burst now at all times is because we can use Enhanced Melee or maybe even Reprise to kind of stall our mana generation. And then when it does come up, we can use our Manification to get our full mana, use Embolden, and then we can do a big burst. Manification is 10 seconds shorter recast time than Embolden, so you could delay this by like a few seconds so that you're making sure that you always will have your melee combo ready when you do go into your Embolden, which is then like your big burst phase. And that's pretty much Red Mage. It's a pretty... Oh yeah, well, of course, we still forgot about two other things. We have Flesh, which is a single target of GCD, and we have Contra Sixt, which is an AoE of GCD. These are on fairly low cooldown, so you'll be spamming those quite a bit. But that's pretty much Red Mage. It's really simple, but it's still quite fun, and it looks flashy to play as well. Like, you just being a caster, casting from afar, and then once your mana is ready, you just go in, press your Embolden, you do your big melee combo, you backflip out again, then you use your big combo finisher, and then you use your Scorch, and then you're ready to do it all over again. And then, like, for example, here we have enough mana, again, Manification, dash back in. Maybe we can't backflip out this time, so we'll do the backflip on the spot. Use our combo finisher, and then Scorch again. And you just keep going like that. That's pretty much Red Mage. It's pretty simple, but it's also pretty fun. It is probably the weakest caster of all of them at the moment when it comes to personal damage. But it's definitely high up there when it comes to personal enjoyment for me. This was one of my favorite casters to play back in Stormblood, probably because it was new. But it was pretty unique for a caster, like having so many instant casts available to you is not something that you would see all that often. It also offers really good party utility in the sense that Embolden is relatively strong, but also in the sense that you have a combat res which works together with that dual cast. So for example, if somebody was to die, you can just dual cast like a Jolt, or maybe like even have a Cure, and your Cure actually does a lot of healing. Like, as you can see, I just healed myself for 12k HP. So if I just spam this on someone, I can kind of keep them alive when both of my healers are dead, and then I can just spam Raise on my healers. So I'd be like, Vercure the tank, then Raise a healer, then Vercure the other tank, and then Raise the other healer, because the 10-second cast time does not affect me, as I have those dual cast procs. So that's why I think Red Mage is probably one of the best casters when it comes to progression rating. When it does come to, like, when you're going for a kill, like a first kill or something, it's better to bring something like a Black Mage, because Black Mage damage is just unrivaled at the moment, especially when you compare it to the other casters. There's just nothing that can compare to it. But having a Red Mage there for progression is really good, in my opinion, because you have that chain res. You can basically res, like, what is it, 4 times if you have full mana, basically. So you really can save a lot of pulls to then push your group further into the next mechanics to see more of the mechanics and so on and so forth. So Red Mage, it's really good. If you're new to casters or something and you want to try it out, it starts at level 50. It plays really well at the lower levels as well. So it's definitely something that I would recommend people to try out, as it's a really fun job. And even at endgame, I think in a party finder it's always really valuable as well, because you don't know what kind of people you're going to be playing with, so having that extra resurrection ability available can save pulls and can give you quite less of a headache when it comes to pugging content sometimes as well. So Red Mage, definitely a good job to play. Its damage might not be super high at the moment, but it does have quite a lot of utility in the sense that it has Embolden as well as that combat res that they can use quite often as long as you have mana, pretty much. So yeah, that's Red Mage. It's fun, it's enjoyable. Definitely recommend people to try it out. If you've played it before in Stormblood, then you pretty much already know how it's kind of going to play. Scorch feels a bit weird at the beginning, but once you get used to it, it is quite a nice addition to your gameplay. So with all of that being said, I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.